Is liberty dying where you live? Escape to Keene at freekeene.com.
Good afternoon, Mr. Paul.
Good afternoon. My name is Rich Paul. I've been a victim of the war on drugs in New Hampshire. My first marijuana arrest was for half a joint, and it took place in 2009. I spent 12 days in jail because I didn't have the money to pay the fine. One thing you have to remember is your children, because you're politicians and because you have money.
Can I just please, there's talking in the back, if we could keep the noise down so we can hear Mr. Paul and his testimony.
Your children, because you're politicians and you have money, are immune from the legal system. So just like Barack Obama didn't go to jail for smoking weed, George W. Bush didn't go to jail for smoking weed, Bill Clinton didn't go to jail for smoking weed, because these are rich, connected people. So the fact that, you know, if y'all have had children have run-ins with the law and you've been able to get out of them, that doesn't mean that the plebeians have the same option. Really what we're talking about here is the proper role of government. Thomas Jefferson in 1776 wrote that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When I smoke weed, I am pursuing happiness. It goes on to say that it is to secure these rights that governments are instituted amongst men. Not to protect people from actual harm, but to protect people from having their rights violated. There's a big difference there. For example, if I grow up Muslim and convert to Christianity, I might break my mother's heart, but I don't violate her rights. The fact that someone might have an emotional reaction to your actions is not a sufficient reason to keep those actions illegal. A very important thing to remember when you talk about the war on drugs is that we didn't declare war on you. You declared war on us. And just like the Jews didn't declare war on the Nazis, just like the Armenians didn't declare war on the Turks. This is not a war. In war, you have two sides fighting. We only have one side fighting. This is called a massacre, okay? Even when you're loading us onto the trains, we rarely fight back, okay? So it's important to remember that this war is a massacre. That means that we don't kick down your doors, you kick down our doors. We don't tap your phones, you tap our phones. We don't steal your future, you steal our future. And that's what you do to people when they are caught with marijuana. You steal their futures. There's been talk about the increased potency of marijuana. Obviously that's an effect of prohibition because your marijuana laws say charge you based not on the amount of THC you're carrying, but it includes any adulterants to that THC. Smaller things like hashish and wax are also easier to transport. So just like prohibition caused people to switch from beer and wine to hard liquor, prohibition of marijuana causes people to change from regular marijuana to smoking spice, especially if they're on prohibition. Especially if they're on probation. I was forced to switch to spice when I was first on probation until I decided that it was just too dangerous, and I switched back to marijuana, and then I spent 6 months in jail for violation of probation, but you know, at least I didn't have to lie to them. We talk a lot about sending messages in here, and I'm trying to do this like high speed, so bear with me.
That's okay.
We talk about a lot about sending messages in here. Well, when a kid starts smoking pot, he receives lots of messages. One of them is, you're now an outlaw. You are now no longer eligible for the protection of the state. So if you are robbed, if you're assaulted by the person you're buying weed from, don't call the police. You know? It's just this idea that somebody is turned into a criminal, that suddenly they are no longer a part of society, that they shouldn't be allowed to have a job, they shouldn't be allowed to go to school because they smoke weed, makes it really suspect when people say, oh, gee, well, people who smoke weed are frequently poor and they have bad educational outcomes. Yeah, being thrown out of school is a bad educational outcome, you know? Being screened out of jobs by tests, that's a bad employment outcome. But let me tell you, if there's something wrong with my work, you should be able to find that by examining my output, not my urine. If you have to look in my urine to find the defects of my work, they are perhaps too subtle to be considered. I guess I will end there. I guess there's one other thing that I will say is that all of these pointless laws, these hate laws that are kept on the books against people who aren't harming anyone, they also become very important for government corruption. You know, you do have to note that all of these representatives of the police unions that have been lobbying today on behalf of their unions, yeah, they want to keep getting the overtime. The prison guards want to keep, you know, being paid to guard people who just smoke weed. Everybody likes to make money. And, you know, there's another good reason. Beyond avarice, there's also cowardice. If you're a cop and you're arresting robbers and rapists and murderers, these are dangerous people, bad people. They might hurt you. But a pot smoker is probably not going to put up much of a fight. I mean, he's just a guy who smokes weed. On the issue of addiction, marijuana is not addictive in the classic sense, in that there are no physical withdrawal symptoms. You might be a little grumpy if you're not smoking weed, especially if the reason you smoke weed is that you were a little grumpy in the first place. But you know, it's not the same as something like alcohol, which has severe physical withdrawal. And when somebody is a drunk, when somebody's on alcohol and they can't get it and they're sweating and they're shaking, that's when they're really at risk for moving on to a harder drug, okay? Because marijuana won't completely take that away, although it will ease the symptoms, but you know, a harder drug like oxycodone, that'll knock alcohol withdrawal out, just like that. And I guess the last thing I'd like to point out is that, you know, a lot of people who get into hard drugs while they're in prison. Because, you know, they have nothing left. They're a felon now, they're never going to have a good job again, just like I'm never going to have a good job again. They're never going to go to school again, just like I'm never going to go to school again. So what do they have left to lose? It's not surprising that when you've stolen somebody's life, they turn to a substance to kill that pain. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Senator Cataldo.
Just one. You made the statement that if you were Muslim, you turned Christianity, what would the results be? Probably get your head chopped off.
Well, it's possible, but that's only among certain types of Islam. And in general, the American Muslims don't do that much. It's places where we've radicalized the Muslims by bombing campaigns over the course of decades, and by replacing their elected government with puppet dictators.
We're not going to get into a discussion.
Madam Chair, if I could, we have a law enforcement professional flew from Maryland, and he neglected to check the speaking box.
Every person who has signed up to speak has spoken, with the exception of Ms. Chaffee. Her name was called. She was not here when her name was called. He signed up and
Major Franklin did not understand he had to check the speaking box. Major Neil Franklin. He's a 34-year veteran of law enforcement. He flew up here to testify before you today. If you could give him 2 minutes.
We have to get out of this room, Mr. Simon. We have been here for over 3 hours. Please, sir, you can submit your testimony. Ms. Chaffee can do the same thing to submit written testimony. I apologize. We only have this room till 1 o'clock and we have to be out of here before 1 o'clock. Again,
he was probably the best person to speak today.
He's got 10 minutes.
But the problem, sir, is that they need to come in The other committee needs to come in and get set up to prepare for their hearings that start at 1 o'clock. We have been here for over 3 hours.
I understand, Madam Chair. We'll be available until 4:15 if anybody has any time to meet with Major Franklin.
We're not acting on this bill today, so if there's testimony that folks would like to send to the committee, we're more than happy to consider that. But unfortunately, as I said, we've been here for well over 3 hours. I'm sorry, this individual is not signed up to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeene.com. Freekeene.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeene.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeene.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.